Hi there. Why do game consoles always feel the need to yell at me whenever I want to play a video game? Like, why does the PS2 feel the need to hit me with the whenever I want to gamble? Picture this. It's 1 a.m. and you're supposed to be asleep, but you want to play Minecraft really bad. So you go up to your Xbox 360, pop in the disc, turn the TV on. It is 1 in the goddamn morning. The console startup has become a staple of video games, and some of them are arguably more impactful on pop culture than the console itself. For example, the GameCube startup. Yeah, it's a bunch of cubes that form a cube, why wouldn't it be? Most people who've seen and loved the GameCube startup couldn't name 3 GameCube games if they tried. Mario Party 4, Mario Party 5, Mario Party 6? Console startups are the first thing you see when you turn on a game console. Usually, so they need to catch your attention. But where did it all begin? Well, not the 70s, but whatever. When home video game consoles were first being developed, they all used cartridges, which meant you didn't really need a startup. Because you see, console startups are basically just glorified loading screens. During the time that these animations are playing, the console is loading the information off the disc that you inserted, or loading the home menu. With cartridges, they don't really need to load anything. A cartridge is basically just an extension of the console. Everything the console needs to know is right there. That's one reason why early consoles didn't have home menus. So back in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, consoles didn't really need startup animations. However, that all changed when CDs became the norm in the industry, as it became necessary for consoles to cover up what they were doing back there. Consoles like the Vectrex in the early 80s had startups, but they were few and far between. And CD add-ons for consoles also had startups, but nobody cared about those, so it's fine. So, we cut to the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation in late 1994. These consoles used CDs and only CDs, so they needed startups. The Sega Saturn had this slideshow looking ass animation with shards of the Sega Saturn logo flying into view, eventually forming the logo alongside the name and copyright date for some reason. Why would you need to put the copyright info on the startup? How is the consumer gonna steal something they've already paid for? Gotta put it at the bottom so they know who's boss. And the PS1 had one of the most iconic startups of all time. Now, these were early console startups, and I don't really think that the companies making these consoles thought too much about what they were. These weren't added to the console to give the console more charm, they were added so that the user didn't realize what the console was doing. But as we make our way into the 6th generation, we get some of the most iconic console startups of all time. These startups actually feel like a major part of the console's brand. It was like the company making the console knew that people would look back on them fondly. The Sega Dreamcast was pretty neat, very soothing sounds and fluid animation. It was basic, but it did the job. Now the PS2? Why the hell does Sony feel the need to make their console startups as creepy and eerie as possible? Every single one makes me feel like I'm being sent to the depths of hell when I watch it. And the PS2's is easily the creepiest one they've made, although it actually does have meaning to it outside of just masking loading. The number of towers shown apparently equals the amount of save data you have on the console. That's a really cool attention to detail that nobody would realize unless it was pointed out to them. The original Xbox has this nuclear power plant of a startup that is apparently randomly generated each time you start the console, meaning that each Xbox startup is like snowflakes. Except snowflakes don't make your ears bleed. And then we have the GameCube, which has probably the most iconic console startup of all time. Even though the GameCube didn't sell very well, the internet has completely revitalized the console's image just through the startup alone. It's truly impressive just how much more well-known a game console can be based on such a minor part of the UI. Like the Wii, whose home menu is incredibly iconic. What about the startup animation? Just like how this doctor's note is my startup animation. Does this count? The 7th generation of consoles was what started the slow death of console startups. The Xbox 360 is the only one that has a well-defined console startup, and it's iconic. It did have a different one when it first launched, but they changed it because they were bored. And the PS3 had a slow fade from black to some kind of wave-looking thing with a really nice orchestra playing in the background. The Wii and PS3s are so boring though, like where's the fun? Where's the character? I mean, for a console as striking and unique as the Wii, you'd think Nintendo would have wanted the first thing someone sees when they boot the console to also be striking. But no! Instead it's, hi, we're Nintendo and we don't want to get sued. Please don't eat your Wii censor bar. Aw, damn it. That's pretty much all that console startups are nowadays. I mean, the Xbox One and Wii U tried to continue the console startup, but they were the most corporate ones I've ever seen. And with the 9th generation of consoles, they're pretty much gone entirely. Sure, they're there when you turn the console on for the first time, but they all just have an option to immediately boot to the home menu. Like, for example, the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. When you turn both of these consoles on for the first time, they have such fun and unique startup animations that really harkens to the fun and joy that Nintendo tries to bring in all of their consoles and games. But once they've played, they're gone. You can't get the consoles to play them again unless you completely wipe the consoles and go through the setup again. I understand that most game companies have mastered loading and that if given the option, most people would skip the startup animation, but why would Nintendo feel the need to completely remove the animations from the console? I'm a fucking dork who would love to see the Switch 2 logo every time I turn my console on, but you can't even try to see it again. And with the PS5 and Xbox Series X, yes, the Series X has a startup animation, but it's just the Xbox logo with some weird white noise in the background. It makes me feel like Microsoft is trying to market Xbox as some kind of lifestyle brand, like a really high-end brand of toilet paper. And then with the PS5,
do it.
This is genuinely the most boring one I've ever seen. There's nothing to it. Now, to be fair, the PS5 and Xbox Series X really pushed faster loading as a selling point for 9th gen, so there really isn't a reason for a console startup anymore. And that really sucks, because console startups give a console part of its charm. Companies continue to strip their products of character year after year, and game companies are no different. But if we could just keep one thing, why not make it the first thing you see when you start the console? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why game companies feel the need to strip their consoles of something like this. It makes me less and less excited to buy a console. I don't feel any reason to be excited if all I'm just gonna buy is a locked down PC. But maybe I just need to accept the fact that companies are going in a different direction with their game consoles. The era of consoles feeling unique and having character to them is sadly on the way out. Honestly though, maybe that's a good thing, because my ears have bled enough today.